That feeling, right? When you kind of stop and look around at your life.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you've hit some milestones, built something decent, got good people,
Mm-hmm.
but there's still that little nagging sense, maybe. Like something's not quite firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, that feeling of like chasing something, reaching for happiness, but it feels just out of reach sometimes. It's really common.
Exactly. And if that sounds familiar to you, especially if you're someone who's always trying to learn and grow, well, we're going to explore that today.
We are. We're diving into Build the Life You Want, The Art and Science of Getting Happier. It's by Arthur C. Brooks and Oprah Winfrey.
Right. And think of this as maybe a shortcut. We want to pull out the really practical stuff, the insights you can actually use,
Yeah.
not just, heavy theory.
Like having a chat with a couple of guides who've looked through the map already.
Yeah, exactly.
And part of what makes this book so interesting is Oprah's perspective, drawing on years, decades really, of her show.
She saw so much.
She really did. She talks about seeing people who had, well, everything on paper, success, fame, wealth, but were deeply unhappy.
Mm.
And then conversely, people facing incredible hardship, real struggles, who somehow found a surprising amount of joy.
It makes you wonder, what's the secret sauce there? How do some people manage that resilience, that happiness, even when things are tough?
Definitely. And for Arthur Brooks, this wasn't just academic. His mentioned his own sort of baseline happiness being, well, lower than average.
Oh, interesting.
His work as a social scientist looking into happiness was also, as he calls it, me-search, a very personal quest.
Right. Okay, so let's get into it. The first big idea, it seems, is about rethinking what happiness even is.
Yes, that's fundamental. The book really pushes back against this idea that happiness means being constantly blissful, or that it's about getting rid of all unhappiness.
Just chasing El Dorado or something.
Exactly. That searching for this perfect, permanent state of bliss is, well, it's probably futile. It doesn't really exist that way. We get glimpses, maybe. A great holiday, a celebration.
Sure, moments, but not a constant state. And we all know people who seem to have it all but are struggling underneath.
Right.
So if it's not that, what is it then?
What does the book say?
They break it down into 3 main components. Think of it as a mix. There's enjoyment, those good feelings, maybe fleeting pleasures.
Okay.
Then satisfaction, which is more that deeper sense of accomplishment you get from, striving and achieving something meaningful over time.
Right. Like finishing a big project or raising kids.
Exactly. And the third is purpose, feeling your life matters, that it has some meaning and direction. And the key thing is these can all exist alongside some unhappiness.
Ah, so they're not mutually exclusive.
Not at all.
Yep.
You don't have to eliminate all the negative feelings to start building up the positive ones. Modern psychology actually supports this. Positive and negative emotions aren't just opposite ends of one spectrum.
They can coexist.
Yeah, they operate somewhat independently. You can feel stressed about work, but still find real joy in your family life, for example. So getting rid of the bad doesn't automatically create the good. You have to cultivate the good, too.
Precisely.
There's a story in the book about someone named Albina. Seems to illustrate this point really well.
Yes, Albina's story is quite powerful. She faced, well, a really rough patch. Her husband left her, she had 3 kids to raise, and basically fell into poverty.
Wow.
And understandably, she was deeply unhappy for years. Just felt trapped, hopeless, spent a lot of time just staring out the window, feeling that despair.
That sounds incredibly difficult. So what changed for her? Did her circumstances improve dramatically?
Well, that's the interesting part. Around age 45, something started to shift internally. Her external situation didn't magically fix itself overnight. No lottery win, no perfect new relationship.
Okay.
But her perspective started changing. She sort of stopped waiting for life to get better to her and began actively trying to manage her own well-being right there in the middle of her difficulties.
She took control of her inner world, even if the outer world was still challenging.
Exactly. And the amazing thing was, as she got older, even facing new physical limitations that often come with aging, her actual sense of joy grew.
Really?
Yeah, people around her noticed it. She became happier. It shows that this capacity for happiness isn't just something you're born with or not. It's something she learned, she cultivated. It was a choice about how she saw things.
That's incredibly hopeful. So
Yeah.
for anyone listening who feels kind of stuck because of their circumstances.
The message is you can get happier. You don't have to wait for everything outside to be perfect first.
Okay, that's a huge shift. So if we accept that, how do we actually do it? How do we start managing things better?
Yeah.
That brings us to the second lesson, right? Emotional self-management.
Right. This is about moving from just understanding to actively doing. And a key concept here is metacognition.
Metacognition. Sounds a bit clinical.
Huh, maybe a little.
Yeah.
But it basically means thinking about your thinking. Or maybe easier, observing your own emotions almost like they're happening to someone else.
Okay, like stepping outside yourself for a moment.
Exactly like that. When a strong feeling hits frustration, anxiety, whatever, it often comes from a more reactive, primal part of the brain, the limbic system. Metacognition helps you bring your prefrontal cortex online, the more thinking, rational part.
So you're not just swept away by the feel.
You're not just swept away, you create a little space. The book talks about this gap between what happens to you, the external event, and how you respond. In that space, that pause,
That's where the choice lies.
that's where your freedom is. You get to decide how to react instead of just letting old habits or raw emotion take over.
Okay, give me an example.
Yeah.
How would this work, say, if someone's really stressed about their job?
Okay, good one. Let's say your job often leaves you feeling bored, stressed, maybe your boss isn't great.
Familiar territory for some.
Right, and maybe you fall into unhealthy coping patterns, complaining constantly, zoning out, maybe drinking too much after work.
Okay.
Metacognition practice could be simple. Maybe set a reminder once an hour just to check in. How am I feeling right now? Just notice it. No judgment.
Just aware.
Just awareness. Then, maybe at the end of the day, take 5 minutes to jot down. What situations triggered strong feelings? What were the feelings? How did I react? Was that reaction actually helpful?
Like keeping a little emotional logbook?
Sort of. Do that for maybe a week or two. You start seeing patterns. You realize, okay, when X happens, I tend to do Y, and Y doesn't actually make me feel better long term. That awareness itself gives you more control.
And then you can start making different choices. Maybe talk to the boss, look for a new role, find healthier ways to de-stress.
Exactly. It empowers you to take productive action instead of just feeling like a victim of your feelings or circumstances.
The book mentions Boethius the philosopher, even in prison.
Yeah, incredible story. Boethius was imprisoned, facing execution. I mean, talk about extreme circumstances.
Right.
And yet he wrote about finding happiness through his inner attitude, through managing his perspective. He basically said, nothing is miserable unless you think it is. If he could practice that kind of metacognitive awareness under that kind of duress, it really suggests that we all have that capacity. It's trainable.
So it's not just about observing the tough emotions. What else helps?
Other practices include deliberately building a kind of database of positive memories. You can actively recall good times to counteract the brain's negativity bias.
Makes sense.
And also trying to find meaning or learning in the hard stuff. Okay, so you didn't get that promotion. What can you learn? How can you grow from this? It reframes the setback.
And gratitude comes in here too, doesn't it? Big time.
Oh, absolutely. The book really emphasizes gratitude, not just as a feeling you wait for, but as a practice, something you actively do.
Like a muscle you exercise.
Exactly. Intentionally focusing on what you do have, what you appreciate, even small things. The research is really strong on this simple gratitude practices boost positive emotions significantly.
What's a practical way to start?
They suggest trying this. Every day for a week, list 5 things you're grateful for. Could be anything: morning coffee, a friend, sunshine. Look at the list. Then next week, update it. See if you notice a shift in your overall attitude.
Just 5 things a day. Seems manageable.
It really is.
Okay, so we've got rethinking happiness itself, and then actively managing our emotions through awareness and gratitude. What's the third big piece?
The third key lesson focuses on intentional living, specifically by shifting your focus outward. It sounds a bit paradoxical.
Inner-outer paradox, they call it.
That's the term. The idea is that you improve your inner world, your happiness, often by focusing more on the outer world,
How so?
by actively engaging with things outside yourself. Your relationships with people, meaningful work or activities, connecting with nature, maybe exploring spirituality or a sense of purpose larger than yourself.
So happiness isn't just found by looking inward, navel-gazing.
Less navel-gazing, more world-gazing, in a way. It's not about waiting for external circumstances to magically make you happy, but recognizing that engaging with the world in a positive way often generates those internal feelings of well-being.
Oprah talks about detached attachment in this context.
Yes, that's her term for it, being fully invested in your work, your creations, the people you care about, but without being rigidly attached to specific outcomes.
So you pour your heart into it, But you don't let your entire sense of self ride on whether it succeeds exactly as you hoped.
Precisely. It protects you from being completely crushed if things don't pan out perfectly, which, let's face it, they often don't.
Makes sense. The book also brings up this idea of the I self versus the me self. Can you break that down?
Sure. Think of the I self as the pure observer, the part of you that's just experiencing life moment by moment, awareness itself.
Okay.
The me self is the object of your own attention. It's your identity, your self-image, how you think you appear to others, all that internal chatter about me, me, me.
The ego, perhaps.
Kind of related, yeah. The book argues that well-being comes from a better balance, and most of us spend way too much time stuck in the me self.
Obsessing over ourselves, worrying what others think.
Exactly. Constantly evaluating, comparing, seeking validation.
Which feels very true in our hyper-connected social media age.
Yeah.
So how do we strengthen the I self, the observer?
They offer some simple, maybe even surprising habits. One is literally spending less time looking at your own reflection, fewer mirror checks, less focus on selfies or mentions online.
Interesting. Get out of your own head by getting out of your own image.
Sort of. Another is actively seeking out experiences that inspire awe or wonder. Things that make you feel small in a good way. Nature, art, grand ideas. They pull you out of yourself.
That feeling of awe.
And even just going for a wander sometimes. No destination, no goal, just walking and noticing the world around you, being present.
Shifting from doing to just being and observing.
That's a good way to put it. It counteracts that self-absorption.
And why do we care so much what others think? The book touches on the evolutionary roots, right?
Yeah, it's wired in pretty deep. For most of human history, belonging to the tribe was crucial for survival. Being ostracized could literally be a death sentence.
So caring about social approval kept us safe.
Right. But that instinct is kind of maladapted for today's world. With online canceling, constant judgment on social media, it triggers that ancient fear disproportionately.
Marcus Aurelius had a quote about this.
He did, the Roman emperor. He observed something like, "We love ourselves more than other people, but we care more about their opinion than our own."
Oof, that hits home.
Doesn't it? It highlights that internal contradiction.
And this ties into envy, which the book calls a real happiness killer.
Absolutely. Envy is corrosive. Neurologically, feeling envy actually lights up the same part of the brain associated with physical pain.
Wow, it literally hurts to be envious.
It seems so. And social media can be like pouring gasoline on that fire, right? You're constantly exposed to these curated, perfect-seeming highlight reels of other people's lives.
Making comparisons almost unavoidable.
Very difficult to avoid. But they offer a technique to kind of blunt envy's edge.
What's that?
When you find yourself feeling envious of someone who seems to have it better, consciously try to imagine their whole life, not just the highlight reel, but their everyday struggles, their bad days, their own anxiety.
Humanize them, basically. Realize they have ups and downs, too.
Exactly. It breaks down that idealized, envy-inducing image.
So the big picture for this third lesson is about shifting focus. Away from waiting for the world to change, and more towards changing our own inner state and how we engage with the world.
That's the core of it, taking responsibility for your inner life by intentionally directing your attention outward in healthy ways.
This has been really, really helpful. So just to quickly recap the main takeaways from Build the Life You Want.
Okay.
First, happiness isn't about eliminating all problems or feeling bliss 247. It's more like a combination of enjoyment, satisfaction, and purpose, and it can definitely coexist with life's difficulties.
Right. You can get happier even when things aren't perfect.
Second, we have more control over our emotions than we think through emotional self-management. Practices like metacognition, just observing our feelings and cultivating gratitude, can make a real difference.
Taking that active role in managing your inner world.
And third, intentional living, especially shifting our focus outward. Connecting with people, purpose, nature, paradoxically helps build inner well-being. Less self-obsession, more engagement.
Less me-self, more I-self, observing and participating. And the really crucial point underlying all of this is that happier is a direction, not a destination. It's something you do, something you work towards, not a fixed state you suddenly arrive at.
It's a practice, an ongoing process.
Exactly.
So for you listening right now, what's maybe one small thing you could try, like today?
Yeah, keep it simple.
Maybe just take 30 seconds later to notice one feeling you're having, good or bad, and just observe it without judging it or needing to fix it immediately.
Or start that gratitude list. Just one thing. What's one tiny thing you appreciate right now?
Yeah. Or look for one chance today to shift your focus off your own worries for a minute and onto someone else, or just something beautiful outside your window.
These small shifts, practiced consistently, can really add up.
So maybe think about which of these ideas kind of sparked something for you. What's one little experiment you could run in your own life, starting now?
Because ultimately, building the life you want, that journey towards greater well-being, it's ongoing for sure, but it's also much more within your control than you might